Thank you.
All right, next item is athletic summary for 3 years.
So there was a question asked about this when we were looking at athletic data. I just put in had Art compile this summary. It's basically everything you've seen over the last quarterly reports that were provided by the athletic department, but it's all on one page. You can see what sports dropped off, what sports didn't, or increased. I asked Art, I know Mr. Gritchen had asked a question about is there a way of breaking it down, like why some teams went up, why some teams went down. There's not a specific way to get to some of this information. One thing we talked about was doing an athletic survey, but trying to get 100% participation at the end of the year to try to get to the bottom of, well, why did some kids not choose to run cross country this year compared to when 2 years ago when there was no pay to play. So I just wanted to put a summary of this data on here. At our last board meeting, the Board of Education was discussing the whole pay to participate, and we saw that overall in the year of 2012-13 with the $200 a sport, that we really dropped significantly only in the three sport athletes. And then there was discussion of, hey, looking at other alternatives and looking at dollar amounts. And basically what I was saying to the board is the administration would implement whatever the Board of Education would want to see, or the consensus of the board, but it would be at the result of a reduction in revenue. And I think Mr. Cindy was the one who asked the question, well, how would we offset that reduction in revenue? And I responded, there is no way to offset that. We've cut the supplies, we've cut the assistance. We're at a point to where we can't offset anymore. So it's just a matter of the board looking at whether we want to hold for another year to see how our data goes for another year at 200, or if we want to look at something else and reduce the revenue slightly. The one thing that Ms. Bilesma, myself, and Mr. McGinnis talked about in our weekly cabinet meeting, where the three of us just meet, there was some discussion about maybe third sport being free. And the concern that the principal had, and after hearing her a little discuss it with Mr. McGinnis and I, and we also believe that she had a valid point, was that we're only helping about 32 families. And instead of, if the board is going to think of trying to do something to ease the pain, instead of looking at the third sport, we'd rather see you look at something across the board, whether it be a little less. Instead of saving 32 families $200, spread that $6,000 or $10,000 out over the entire athletic population by maybe making it 190 or 180 per sport, and doing something like that. Or putting just a family cap but leaving it at 200 a sport, because we think if we're actually considering something, we'd like to try to help each family, and not just the 32 families that had people that were playing three sports. At this time, the administration has no recommendation except that we try to do something that helps out everybody, and we're open to the directives of the board on what you would want to do for this. Just understand that whatever we do reduce by will reduce some of the revenue.
Any comments?
Do we know how many families have multiple athletes?
Yeah, it's in that.
We do not have that on this chart.
I imagine that would be significant. If you had 3 kids in high school, that could.
We're talking 32 three-sport students, is that?
I think she's saying.
Yeah, but we don't know how many families
average
have more than one
Right.
kid in the sport.
I do not have that right tonight, and I don't know if will be able to pull that.
That's fine.
And you need a decision by this?
I don't need a decision on this tonight. The tentative budget will be approved in July. The board might, after seeing this tonight and seeing the numbers we presented, when we looked, the way I walked away from this conversation last board meeting, when you saw the information and we saw that really the only sports that kind of took a dip were the three sport athletes, and that overall our one-sport athletes in some programs increased participation. I didn't walk away at the last meeting in May thinking that there was a significant need to make a significant change. I put the summary of this so you could see all 3 seasons on one page. You can see total participation numbers. I know there was a suggestion about maybe making the third sport free, and that's where Pam and Tim after some long discussions thought, instead of saving that money to just 32 families, we'd rather see you go to 190 across the board and not, but that, once again, you're just moving shells or money from pails.
My idea of taking this revenue, divide it as a registration fee for everybody.
Can't
make
do
anything
it.
Sport. Why is that?
Talked with legal. They're going to get us something in writing, but the athletic participation and activity participation is not a part of a mandatory public education, a free public education. So you couldn't require people to pay a fee. The reason you could do it as a fee, extracurricular, is because those students are then choosing to participate in an after-school activity and pay the fee, but it's not part of the free and public education. So they were going to get us something in writing, but I did talk to Franzik on that.
So again, we have certain goals that say there's a certain level of participation that we want to achieve. What we're seeing here is behavior that we're seeing is that the most significant impact has been the third sport. Based on the breakout of sports, it appears to be cross country. If you look at the decrease, it's 50% of the decrease between the girls and the boys cross country. I mean, again, to have a person participate in 2 sports, they're still participating versus 3 sports. So we still are achieving our goal.
So if we look at that on the chart, it looks like we had 720 students, because that was the total athletes. That would be about 50% of our student body
Roughly, yeah.
that participated in at least one sport.
Correct.
Did we set a target participation goal?
I don't know if you can on an athlete versus wanting to participate in drama or
Right.
participate in debate or participate in chess. I mean, there's different people, so I don't know. What we did set was an overall goal that we want to have students participate
In one thing.
in activities,
In
other
one-
activities.
right.
We don't, whether it's athletic or non-athletic is not what we're trying to pigeonhole anyone. What we're trying to do is to get them participating in something.
Right, and what I'm saying is, I'm just following your question, do we have the data where we could find out what portion of our student body has either participated in either a sport or activity? At
That's
least
the
in one-
question I'd asked last meeting is,
Right, we
what
will
are the
be-
ones who are not participating?
So I think a couple pieces of data, that, and then,
Well, we'll be able to report out the number of kids that are in either an activity or one sport. That goes on our district goal chart. That's one of our district goals.
okay,
So we will have that for you.
okay. Family cap, do we have any families that are paying an egregious amount of money for sports? Would you be able,
Well, if you had
Again-
2 kids and 3 sports, it's $1,200.
that might be something we want to consider.
We don't know if it's any, but Gary's point out, we don't know if
We don't know
people
that.
have dropped the third
Right.
sport because of that. The date is just not
And what we
available.
haven't focused in are those students who are not participating, and what is the reason why they're not participating in anything?
But here's one suggestion of the data that Gary pointed out. It's the 2 sports that have had the biggest impact are cross country. You need 21 runners, right? There's varsity, open, and frosh soft, aren't there? Is there 3 teams at the meets usually?
I don't know.
John, you were a
Yeah,
runner,
that's
do you know?
right. That's
So
the
you
full
need
team.
21 runners just to compete, and we only had, we went from 43 3 years ago to 25 on girls and 42 to 24 on boys. So as John, our economist, always points out, we could look at just the 2 sports and see if we should try to do something just for cross-country. Since the data is showing that one might be a problem, we're having difficulty getting kids to come out.
Well, I gotta tell you, the total number of people doing one sport's increased. The total number of athletes has increased. I don't know what's causing the anomaly in cross-country. It could be people just don't want to do it anymore. I'm not seeing a tremendous argument here to tweak these
Well,
numbers.
I talked to the cross-country coach, and he said that it is a sport where, like, winter sport and spring sport, especially track runners, will come out and run to stay in shape. And some of them are good runners, too. And I'm just saying, I don't know what the reason is either, but it's the only two sports where we're getting to the point we barely have enough people to cover the events. I don't think that's true in any of the other sports we have there. So you might want to consider that, that's all I'm saying.
Well, and I think we need another column next to, we've got total number of athletes, but our population has increased. So actually, our portion of students in one sport has decreased. Even though our number went from 710 in 2010 to 720 in 2012, we have more than 10 students from the last 3 years. So our percentage of students participating in one sport has decreased overall.
See, what's faulty on Pam's argument, you know, about the third sports, they're the ones that we've decreased. There's no doubt about it. Those parents have already paid $400, and you're saying, well, you're helping only, whatever, 29 families. No, they've already paid $400, okay? They made a contribution. If you really want to affect the margin, you got to address it at the margin. And that's the margin, is the third sport athlete or the second sport. We still have to have some graduated, some type of fee system. We have to adjust it.
Then you look at option number 3, where you're starting out with the 200, and you're looking at 100, and then you're breaking it down to 50, or the amount of decrease versus what you had, you know, if you kept it the same, would be the minimalist reduction, you know.
I would,
But does,
That's a
again,
significant dip in
what is our goal, and what is by getting the third sport free have to accomplish our goal? It doesn't.
Right.
Again, we need to focus in on our goals here. If we want to change our goals and say that we want to have, you know, three sport athletes, or do we want to have that overall participation rate and focusing on that?
Well, you can, yeah, Gary, you're right. You can measure it in a bunch of different ways.
But we
Total
have
number
a
of
set
spots.
goal. We've
Yeah,
got
but we
stated
haven't
goals.
but you're right, we haven't defined it, though. You can define it as, you know, you have so many spots that are available, what percentage of those spots are filled versus how many students do one sport?
Yeah, but then we have to do that. I mean, we're focused. We're talking sports now here, but we have a whole array of other extracurricular activities that are non-sports related. That we would then have to tear that apart and figure out, okay, you know, drama or debate. We want to, you know, have 25 people in a debate. I mean, that
Well,
blows
isn't
that all up.
Isn't the participation goal saying a student coming to this high school, we want them to participate in something?
At least
A
one
at least
activity,
one thing.
yes.
Is it a sports or is it
Yes.
extracurricular activities? We want them to do something.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the third, like you said, the third sports, you know what I mean?
and we do
It doesn't,
offer,
you
we
know.
do offer 10 clubs that are free.
And
Have
those-
some leadership or social.
If we really want to achieve that goal, it's focusing in on those students who are not participating and finding out why they are not participating. Is it because they have to work and it's just inconvenient for them when when there's a club happening? What is the reasons? And if we can dig into that, I would rather dig into that before we revamp this pay to play, because I'm not seeing what we've put in place it's still achieving the goal we want to achieve.
Well, the third sport to me seems like a wash. I think there are many athletes in third sports to keep in shape, either running or swimming. And if we've lost 30 and only have 30, it's almost a wash. So if we had the 200 for every sport and the third sport was just free, I mean, it'd probably be a wash. You'd probably gain as many as you lost. And so I don't think we'd be reducing our income at all. But then those students who just want to keep in shape for their other sports could. Just as increases an
If we're
option.
going to talk that, then I think what you have to do is talk about a cap, because you're looking at a three-sport athlete as opposed to saying, I'm in two sports and I also want to participate in
Right, a club.
the
Right.
club.
Right,
Yeah.
Play.
So I don't want to pay for that.
right.
So it might
So
be
you're
better-
disadvantaging people.
Might be better to say a $500 cap
Per student.
per student, so that it's
Per year.
200, it's 2 sports in 1 club, or 1 sport in 3 clubs. It
Well,
might
that
be-
seems reasonable, a cap, an
The,
overall cap.
just to read the district goal, it says engagement. 100% is our goal, each student involved in at least one sport or activity. So,
Right. That's what Gary's.
you know, we're having a lot of discussion about sport, but we also need to
Right, I mean, that's what,
encompass activity.
All right, so why don't we do this? Why don't we come back in July and look at both of these? So we got the sport and we have the extracurricular. Look at them both together and say, okay, here, this is what we want to do as a cap. Would you feel comfortable with that then? And we can just,
Yeah.
it would help us with our goal and then work from there.
I don't think there's much to really look at, to be honest with
Well,
you.
but now we have them both together and we can look at them.
Right, but I'm saying there's no data, or there's no way of
Yeah.
polling the kids and saying, why didn't you get involved in something? We could try to put that up, but I'm saying for what we have right now and to make a decision for registration coming up in August, you know, if the board would want to set a cap, it's just a matter of, you know, kids'
again,
athletics or
anything
activity
we're
should be
doing
$500.
with, at least the data we have here with the third sport athlete, anything we do with changing the fee doesn't do anything close to achieving our goal that we've stated,
I agree.
okay?
Right.
All we're doing is saying, maybe we're considering there's an economic impact to the families that we're willing to consider. But we still need to drive to that goal, and we need to understand how we can get to that participation rate.
Do we
Right.
have a
So-
checkbox in Skyward to?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, that's something going forward into next school year, as we are starting to track this stuff more. Pam can put interventions,
See,
or
wait,
Mike.
wait, wait, I'm gonna time out here on our goal thing. Gary's pointing out a difference in our AP versus athletic participation. I mean, we have all this thing about, we admire all these students that take all these millions of AP courses, but we're not, you know, recognizing or helping to subsidize the student that does, you know, 3 sports. You know, we got to be consistent. AP isn't only just taking one AP course. Is that our goal? No, it's not. We want to encourage people to take as many as they can. It shouldn't be necessarily that different here.
I I support John. I'd say maybe a little bit different because we actually do make our students pay for their AP course, every
Right.
one of them.
Right.
But even though we encourage participation, we made a goal, which I supported, which is to have everybody participate in one, which is in one sense kind of a minimalist goal, where we've talked about it before. I mean, it'd be even better for us if kids participated in 2, especially, or 1 per semester or whatever. And I understand that gets too complicated, maybe we don't want to do it, but I think, especially rounding the kids, if you had participation in a sport and some kind of club or the play or something like that is probably a better thing. But the only thing is that if you did it some kind of a cost cap per student, they'd have to be in a third activity before they'd hit a cap of any kind, whether it's 2 sports, and actually it'd have to be, they could probably be in 3 or 4, maybe 5 club type activities before they hit like 500. So the one thing is, putting a cap on, in one sense, would only probably help families with athletes that are in 3 sports.
Right.
So it's just something to think about.
I think we gotta go back, though, to, and we haven't this, remember I talked about from the superintendent's perspective, who has to handle both the involvement and the money. You wanna hit this goal at a lot faster pace? We don't charge. Then the district has to find $180,000 to make up in revenue that we collected this year. So, as I started this conversation, I will support whatever the board wants to eventually get to. Tonight, you're gonna see a first draft at a budget. If you think we should go another year and leaving it at 200, and if our budget maintains, then that's something we look at in the future to help with this goal. We lower pay to participate. That's a decision the board has to look at. But whatever, if we're gonna put a cap on, or we're gonna try to lower to help out families, we're fine with doing that, but we have to also understand that then the revenue is gonna decrease. Maybe we can afford a revenue decrease, maybe we can't afford a revenue decrease. I just want, I mean, at the end of the day, that's really how we got to this $200
And I would
sport.
go back to my point saying if we do anything with the economic side of it, it's still not gonna do anything to get us closer to our goal. Because it's still not gonna get those people who don't participate for whatever reason. We have free clubs already. They chose still not to participate. Let's analyze why those who are not participating and see if there's something we can do to get them to participate at school. As opposed to trying to, I mean, I didn't see appreciable, you know, understood the third sport athlete went down. But our goal is to not, you know, isn't set, our goal wasn't say, let's get everyone into 3 sports. Our goal was to get 100% of the student body into at least one activity.
Right, and until we can figure out why we're not doing that,
Right.
you know, if we can figure out why we're not getting that or get closer to that goal, then we could expand it. But
Yeah.
at this point, there's kids we want to
And,
be involved in
and the issue is,
activities.
we do have waivers out there, right? There are
Waivers and-
waivers,
and
so.
payments.
As far as we know, is there any reason that families who are eligible for waivers don't ask for them? I mean, is there any
Some of it I just think is just, we do have a lot of families that are on payment plans, or
Okay.
we align our free and reduced lunch standards all the same, so they get it. With the activities, we did waive 13%. I think some of it is just parents sometimes don't pay to see if we're gonna hold them accountable to paying, and then when they find out their kid can't, you know,
No, I
go
meant
to
the-
prom or some of that, then all of a sudden they come up and they pay, or they get on a payment plan.
No, I meant the other. Is there any not reason to our knowledge that families actually could get a waiver based on a free and reduced lunch, don't do it? Is that a problem at all that we know of?
No, I don't know any reason why parents would make.
I mean, it's confidential,
Would
right?
pay.
It's
And
in
Yeah.
every, we put a letter in every residency package.
And nobody would know about it, right?
Correct.
I mean, except for people in your office
Yeah.
or whatever, right? Okay.
Unless it's a pride thing.
Yeah, but the waivers for free and reduced, I mean, that's a very low income for a family of 4. For our middle.
20% of our students, right?
Right, but for a family making 70,000, they're gonna just barely be making it, and they won't qualify for any waivers.
Well, I understand.
So there's a larger portion, probably 65%, that are in the middle. Well, we know that in a norm population, 65% are gonna be between 1 standard deviation above and beyond, and they're not gonna qualify for any waivers, and they may not have extra money, so they can't ask for that.
And so to go and say, put a cap of 500 is not gonna help that family.
No, but
So that's why we need to go look at those who are not participating and try to identify what is the cause. Is it because of economics? Did we have a depreciable overall decrease after we put pay to play, pay to participate in the participation rate? I don't know if we've seen that.
But what I'd like to know, we've had 3 parent surveys, and rather than us make a decision in a vacuum, on any of those surveys or on our registration, have we solicited any data from families to address this issue? To your point, Gary, do we have any families saying it's just too expensive to do this? So without families asking for this, maybe we don't do anything until families start to ask.
And I think the administration's gonna address that next time around. I don't think they have answers right now for us.
Well, and so maybe we as a board should say, in one of your survey tools, do you have a mechanism to solicit data so that we can answer this question?
We can add it to that technology survey going in at revenue,
And
at
maybe-
residency.
And maybe even Art in his exit after a sport, you know, he could send something to the parents, were you satisfied with this, you know, something, so that we could actually get data to answer the question.
I think you'll get the data that parents would not want to pay.
Right.
I don't think that's, I mean, I think you brought up the point when we started talking about surveys a couple months ago, that you usually get people that take surveys that want to have a message to send. So I think you'd get people that say, I don't want to pay. I think the question is as we continue to look at where we're at with athletics, is there ways to come up with that other revenue? Or is there ways that we feel we don't need this additional revenue, or can deal with a cut in that revenue? Remember, we got to 200 because we were going to cut 3 or 4 sports. And then as a board, and we heard from the parents and some of the community members about not cutting sports, we said, hey, if we get to this a dollar amount, we can keep all the sports that we're currently running. So that's how we got to
If
where
we start
are.
opening the door to cut the pay to play for sports, we open the door to cut the fees on the pay to participate, the clubs and all that stuff
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
Because you're then, focusing on an athlete as opposed to, the non-athlete who's participating, and that opens the whole door.
All right, so what does the
So-
board want to do on this one?
Well, there's another issue here, and this is what Tim brought up before. Some of these sports cost like minimal for additional students. You know, the no cuts. So why are we charging them $200 a crack? You know, if you want to increase participation in a sport that doesn't cost us basically anything, that cost should reflect the price of putting it on, or the price should reflect the cost.
Then you should also look at the other way too, is what.
Man, wait, don't like the counter argument thing. I don't like it. Just,
Well,
let-
I'm just telling you
let-
right now that you need to look at.
No,
you're looking at cost
you're
outside.
cutting, let my ideas simmer. That's all I'm asking.
All right, so-
But we
You just
did-
cut it off immediately.
But
No,
you
you
brought it up
didn't.
before,
No, we
so-
didn't bring it off before.
You brought it up last time.
We
No.
did bring up Dr. Keene when we talked about this last year.
Well, this was last year. I'm bringing up Tim's argument, and I'd like to hear his idea on it, because it's a logical sense. And it addresses Gary's thing, too. You're addressing the thing that doesn't cost much. You want a kid at the margin, because that's what the decision is made. Am I gonna join a sport? Well, we maybe should tier the system, so that guy thinking about joining that sport that costs us minimal amount of money, he'll join that one because the price is only $40.
I just want to reflect back, though, we did do that analysis where we then brought in gate receipts and the
Yeah.
money for program, so.
Football costs more than every sport put together, almost.
Yeah,
If the
Yeah,
gate
Swimming
receipts-
swimming costs the
Swimming
most.
is the most expensive sport.
Maybe
main-
per person, but it's not the most expensive sport. Football is.
Right, but we also, when we did that analysis for you last year on gate receipts.
Yeah.
And cost of running minus the gate receipts, it almost came out to be similar to some of the other sports. It was still more.
Were there any sports that are really low at the bottom that cost like nothing, that are no cut? Then you want, those are the sports where.
Cross country's got to be one of the.
Cross
Right,
country
we did all
is one of
that
the cheapest.
last year. I could look and see if
Why
that
don't you look
chart's
at
still
that data
available.
again to see if, because that's another option where we could just address the fee for those sports.
But again, I'm okay with that. That will be a reduction in revenue.
Maybe not, because you get more people participating.
But if we're gonna lower that to get it up to, I think you're gonna still see some reduction in revenue.
Right.
I mean, like girls swimming went up 21 kids with a $200.
No, I'm talking about the lower cost ones. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, from an operational perspective, cross-country, and people would think cross-country and swimming are your two cheapest because the kid just needs a swimsuit and a bathing cap or a T-shirt and a pair of gym shoes. It's the maintenance of the overall facility and some of that goes
Right.
into it.
Well, if we were going to say, but here's the thing. Again, you can analyze data any way you want,
Right.
as John said earlier. The pool's there. If nobody ever swims in a damn pool, the fixed costs on it are there. There's not a lot of extra costs because anybody ever uses it. If you included all the maintenance on the football field and all the other issues we have with it, the cost would go up. I mean, you can analyze the data any way you want. Swimming, the pool's there. Unless you're going to close the pool, the
Some-
costs are there if you never use it.
Some districts have started to do that they drain their pools after the boys' state and then refill it in August when the fall semester comes
It
up.
also brings in a lot of revenue from the people who use it too now, right?
We do have about probably 10,000 a year in revenue.
Plus the intergovernmentals.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean,
But then just when you're simmering your idea, John, is if we start putting a different price on every sport, it's gonna be a nightmare collecting it.
Right. And it
It
starts
gets-
to,
it gets to
goes-
be
You gotta
very-
collect the money anyway.
well, it goes back to then, like,
I
are we
mean, that's
putting?
not an argument. I mean, it may be confusing, but you're still collecting the money. You can have tiered pricing.
Okay,
That's
so,
what I'm saying, just to,
so
it's
let's look at
something
this.
worth looking at. If our goal is, you gotta address the decision at the margin, and you make the price match the cost of us putting it on. It's the most efficient way to do it.
All right, so what other additional information we need to make a decision by the July meeting?
Dr. Skinkis, does I'm sure Art talks with the different coaches, and Does he have a sense why some of these changed? Did he talk with
The
some of the
really
coaches?
only significant ones that changed were the two cross-country, and I think we've touched on that a couple of times, is
Yeah.
that that's the sport that kids use to get in shape for the winter or for their spring sport. And now they pay $200, students have chose to work out on their own or just join a gym, you know.
I mean, that could be the answer why we dropped. They could join LA Fitness for $17 a month or the Y for $17 a month.
And that's their first sport, because it's in the fall.
And isn't boys golf too another one that because they can only take so many to?
Well, I just,
Yeah.
I will have our pull the cost per sport like we gave to this board last year. We went through all of this. I just want to make sure we're not doing the same thing again. We came to that conclusion that school our size might be better off running 22 sports compared to 26 sports. And we didn't want to do that. And then we said to be consistent, we would charge everybody 200 and there would be 200 across the board. We had almost the same conversation, almost at the same time in 2012 that we're having right now in 2013. Through May, through June, same blue charts. We broke it down by number of coaches.
Okay,
And
so we did.
so I just want to, I mean,
Doesn't mean John doesn't have a legitimate point. Everybody here said there's a boys and girls sport that there was a tremendous drop-off on that are low-cost sports to participate in. And the question is, should we look at something like that? Maybe the answer is no. Maybe it's not gathering more data on it. Okay, but I'm gonna tell you, one thing is, I'd like to see the numbers again on how, at some point, maybe once a year you do this, how you determine the sports and how football breaks even or it doesn't, because we have firemen, policemen, the maintenance on the facility, the officials, more coaches than any other sport. We have to repair the helmets every year, replace the equipment, and the answer is swimming costs more. It just, again, it does not reconcile in my, I mean, yes, sometimes we get crowds in the stands, but it depends upon how many home teams we have and everything else, and how the weather is, so.
But if I look at swimming right now, and take that example, the girls swimming is up 21, boys swimming is at no change.
I'm not
know.
challenging
You
how
know
many
what I'm
people
saying?
are participating. I'm challenging the concept that boys and girls swimming are more expensive sports than football.
Well, I'm just telling you right now that when we looked at with art and saying, what do other schools do?
Right.
They do a flat fee by sport, and that's what they do.
I'm not challenging what the fee should be.
What Tim's asked, and I think that's what we're gonna get next, is the cost of the sports.
I could bring that in for
Right.
back.
All right, good. Anything else that we need to have, because we're gonna need to make a decision on our July board meeting.
Or we let it go another year and we track it again.
Well, that's a decision. I mean, we have to decide what to include in
Because
the
we're doing
budget.
that already, if
When
I'm
does
not mistaken.
registration start?
July,
After
after
the
the
BD?
11th. But I believe we're doing another year of activities just because we're only in our first year of collecting that. So we already are doing that with activities. So, I mean, the other option is we go one more year at 200 and we see.
And we do some surveying.
But we did
This is our
decrease.
first year of
Right.
200, remember, we went from
Right.
75 to 200, that was a significant leap.
Well, and I think it's important, we did decrease in portion of students participating in a sport. To John's point, we should monitor it, because we have more students than we had 3 years ago. We only increased by 10 athletes and more, so we should continue to monitor. It's not,
Okay, anything else? All right, Kevin, you know what we need.